It's another day in pandemic paradise, and I am feeling hopeful.
That's Dr. Dominic Carollo, MD, pediatric anesthesiologist at Ochsner Clinic Foundation in New Orleans. But I know him as Dom, my buddy from Sigma Alpha Mu fraternity at the University of Miami. Yes, I was in a fraternity. Whatever, get over it. You know the expression, he'd give you the shirt off his back? Dom is that guy. If I text him with an annoying medical concern of mine, he responds right away. More importantly, when something has happened to my kids and we need quick feedback, Dom responds even faster. He's generous, optimistic, and always willing to help, which makes him the perfect person to treat COVID-19 patients. Normally, Dom works with infants, children, and adolescents before, during, and after surgery in order to ensure safe and effective anesthesia administration. Louisiana is one of the hardest hit states in the South with almost 27,000 cases of COVID-19. As these numbers grew, Dom shifted full time to his hospital's COVID units. This is part 1 of 2 of my interview with him, and he discusses his experience on the front lines, catching COVID-19, and quarantining from his quarantined family.
It's April 20th, 2020, and it feels like there's a tiny bit of hope in the last couple of days to maybe a week. The numbers in New Orleans, where I am located, have started to feel like they peaked, and the hospital itself is starting to talk about the future and how to get things back to normal, which has been hopeful to me. All that is to me is adding hope. There's a little trepidation with that because how do you open up the society and not get a second wave? But I do feel like our hospital has done such a great job of being ready and being prepared.
Right.
And I can tell you that we were never short. I never had that anxiety like what you're hearing in New York. I was never asked to wear. I was asked to wear the same mask over and over again until it was soiled. But when it was soiled, I needed another one. I got another one. There was no drama there. I wore this big respirator that covered my whole face, which you saw recently on if you saw the Ochsner story on Facebook.
This is what Dom is referring to. Yeah, looks pretty serious.
And that's what I wore when I went in the patient's rooms when I was doing the risky things like intubations, putting central lines in, putting arterial lines in, doing things like that. But not when I was having conversations with the patients before we did those things. I would wear the N95 respirator mask that was just covering this and goggles and a face shield.
So when I was recently, I was talking to Amy, and this was probably, I want to say 2.5 weeks ago. So halfway through, shelter in place and halfway through the true start of the pandemic in the US. And she said, everyone is going to know someone who has it. And well, you were the first person I knew who had it. You came out clean on the other side, which is great. But can you talk about like what did it feel like having it?
So the first thing it felt like was I had a cough. So I woke up. I was working nights in the COVID unit. So I started Saturday, March 21st was the first day of our COVID unit, and I worked that very first night. And, we were all anal about what we were doing. And then Monday, so I just want to give you the whole timeline. Monday, I went to work also in the afternoon, Tuesday in the afternoon, Wednesday overnight, and Thursday overnight. Okay? So my body was acting really funny. But on that Friday morning when I came home, I started to have just a tiny dry cough. Well, I'd been working a lot recently, and I wasn't on call that day. So I had a drink. Michelle and I had a cocktail. She went and got these frozen rosés or frosés, and from a place from a place that we're trying to support. that we love, and we like to go there for happy hour. And I felt horrible after I drank a third of it. I felt horrible. It's like, man, this is the weirdest feeling ever. So I went to bed, did not sleep at all. Remember, at this point, I'm already quarantined from my family. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, but I'm by myself.
Got questions about that.
Yeah, and then and then the next morning I woke up and I was like, oh, I feel achy. So I called the Ochsner hotline, and they were awesome. And they said, look, we think you need to get tested. Come in the next hour or two. I said, I'm supposed to work tonight. And they said, oh, no, you can still work tonight. Are you having fever? No fever at this point. Just this cough and this sort of achy feeling. So, but you have to wear a mask the whole time you're at work. There's no more like taking it off, and you have to have it on unless you're in like seclusion. Okay, no problem. So I go and get tested. The test is very uncomfortable. And I go to work, and I feel sort of bad that night, but I am like following the rules. I am wearing gloves. Double gloving.
You said the test is uncomfortable. Is it like a culture?
It's a nasal swab. If you've had a flu test, but it feels like they're biopsying here.
Oh.
But through your nose. So it's about about that long. Can you see perspective? About that long.
Yeah. A while back I had a strep test, and they stick that thing down your throat. That's uncomfortable as hell. You're telling me they put that in your nose?
It goes this way, so it goes straight back. So it's towards. So your nose, your turbinates and everything, to go into your sinus cavity, you go straight, and that it wants to get to your nasal pharynx. So your nose obviously connects to the backside of your mouth, right? And that's all your nasal pharynx and your oral pharynx. And where the virus lives is your nasal pharynx. That's why when you cough and sneeze, it dissipates into the air.
By the way, you could be making all this up and I would still believe you because I know nothing about.
Well, I can tell you I'm not making
anatomy.
This up. I'm not making this up. There's a nasal pharynx and an oral pharynx. So anyway, then the next morning, I told a friend of mine, I said, look, you're going to be my doctor. You text me, check my results when you wake up tomorrow. And he wakes up. We both wake up probably 1 o'clock. So I remember I worked the whole night. And he texts me and says, you're positive. And I said, oh, my God. Well, that night I still felt okay. I sent the Facebook messages that I was feeling okay, but everyone stay home. And I was using that to try to, and that weekend in New Orleans, there was this second line with like 200 people.
Yeah.
The cops had to break up. So I was doing everything I can to send the message that is appropriate, which is at this point, stay home. And then David, the next day, I felt the worst I felt on Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday. And it was 8 out of 10 myalgias, which is generalized aches everywhere on your body, including joints. And the only thing I felt comfortable in was I was either in my hot tub, in the bathtub, or in the shower. I didn't sleep. I tried to take Tylenol. It didn't work that well for me. And then I tried to take, and then I started taking ibuprofen, and that started to work. And then once I read the data that ibuprofen was safe, because I had read initially it wasn't safe, that's when I started to feel better. And I also took hydroxychloroquine. At that time, on March 30th, it wasn't known either way.
Right.
And I had secured some earlier, and I felt comfortable with I knew I had an EKG for the possible heart rhythm issue that people are having. I've had an EKG, and I know I didn't have that. So I wasn't worried about the potential of the cardiac failure.
Right. So there's pain all over your body?
All over, from head to toe.
What hurt the worst?
My legs, and especially, and the good thing about like being in the bath is able to really stretch them out. I also never slept, David. I couldn't sleep for anything, and that was very frustrating, very frustrating.
Because you want some relief, because when you're asleep you don't feel the pain.
Yes, and that's so what you want, and you cannot get it. You just can't get it, and it was very, very frustrating.
So as a doctor who, you're on the COVID units, were you scared as hell? Like, what was your mind state when you learned that you tested positive, and then when the brutal symptoms started to hit?
My mindset was, I need to take some measures to protect myself. And I called a friend of mine who has a child with congenital heart disease, and I asked him to give me, he lives a couple streets away, to give me this instrument we use called a pulse ox that can measure your oxygen saturation. And I was able to keep an eye, because I'm a physician, I was able to keep an eye on my heart rate, my vitals. I have a blood pressure I have a manual blood pressure cuff, and I was able to know that my sats were good. So I was breathing fine on room air. So as long as you're breathing fine on room air, you don't need to go to the hospital, right? I knew I didn't need oxygen. Even though I was in pain, that was the big worry, is that you need oxygen to put a breathing tube in.
Yeah.
But I didn't need that. So I was very blessed with that I didn't need.
And I know that, even before you caught COVID-19, just by virtue of being exposed and working in the COVID units, that you're all quarantined at home under the same roof, but you are quarantined from your quarantined family.
Absolutely.
Right? So
interesting.
Paint that picture. What does that look like?
All right. So we're blessed that we have a nice 4-bedroom house. And my kids all have their own room, and in our master's bedroom there is a master suite. And we decided that the day that I would work on the COVID unit, that everyone would be quarantined at home except for me when I'd go back and forth, and that I would live in the master suite. And Michelle, my wife,
that doesn't sound too bad.
It wasn't that bad. Well, you're gonna see how much of a saint my wife is.
Oh, I know she is.
Moved down into the guest bedroom. Well, then we realized that I can't be coming out of the room. Like, I can't be touching the refrigerator. I can't be making myself a water. So what we did was, she just, honestly, honey, can you please make this for me? The only times that she didn't she didn't actually do something like open a door or do something like that for me was when I would come home from work, either very late at night or very early in the morning when she was still sleeping. But as soon as she would wake up, she'd clean those doorknobs. That's the only thing I ever touched, was the outdoor doorknob. And then I'd put my mask would be on. I'd go all the way up to my room, and then I'd take my mask off. And then she also was able to secure a mask for herself. And then she had a mask, and then so she would bring me lunch with a mask, and then she would drop it off. I had the computer up there, and then we have everything else everyone has: Netflix, Hulu, all that stuff.
All right, so now, if you want to confess that you were faking it, you just want to be waited on. This is a good time.
Well, if I was really smart about this, I would have never gotten COVID, and I'd still be up there in isolation. So I actually did myself a disservice.
Yeah, right.
By getting it and getting quarantined out. Because Michelle saw the email from the infectious disease specialist that said I could be cleared, and she's like, "Oh, this is happening. You're coming out of quarantine."
How did you communicate with your kids when you were
so via FaceTime, and then sometimes I would open the door and they would stand 6 feet away from me or 10 feet away. Yeah. They also have surgical masks, which are very paper thin, and so they would wear that. There were some math homework things I was helping both of them with via FaceTime. My son's school my daughter's school is very technologically advanced. My son's school is a conscious decision to still do things on pen and paper, and and so they were a little bit slower to get the technology up and going.
Yeah.
And so I had to feel like I had to help them with those things. And so I did help with those things, but I would put on my N95 mask, and then I would wear gloves. And I wouldn't touch anything except for once I touched his mouse or helped with his computer, and then we had the disinfectant, and he did the disinfectant. He cleaned everything. Remember, he's a teenager, and then I took my gloves off back in my room.
Yeah, I feel like even with e-learning or any type of learning right now, I think what kids are learning the most is how to disinfect.
That's true.
So yeah, are they?
Sure go ahead.
I know they're used to you, being a doctor and
yes.
doing what you do and being on call. Are they very worried when you go into the COVID units? Was there some initial, like heavy anxiety about it? Like how do the kids react?
I think they are worried, but they're kids. They're resilient. And
Yeah.
I don't show stress. Being an anesthesiologist, one thing that we're very good at, David, is not showing stress in the most critical times, So we do a good job of keep staying calm, and personally, I'm pretty good at that. And so I kept calm the whole time, and I wasn't worried. So they knew to not get worried. They know they've seen me worried before. Obviously, they've seen me anxious,
Mm-hmm.
and they know that this doesn't seem like the dad that's worried. So I just stayed calm for them. My wife can read through that a little bit more, and so she would have some times when she was getting anxious about it. But I just kept reassuring her.
Yeah.
But the kids, you just have to keep your anxiety level as little as possible.
Right.
And then they realize.
Part 2 of my interview will be released on Thursday, and here's a preview.
The patients that are the sickest are on these huge high ventilator settings that are very uncomfortable and not at all, not at any sort of realm of normality.
Thank you for watching, and in the meantime, be smart, be safe, and be well.